Welcome to the Character Sheet, comicbook.com's official home for all things tabletop and fantasy. It's time for another special episode because I'm here once again with Damien Haas. How's it
Hi,
going,
you can't
Damien?
get rid of me.
No, you're like a very nice looking bad penny.
Thank you.
With slightly colored purple. Um
Yeah.
yeah. It's been a little bit
hmm
since we last had you on. But we are here once again to talk about Sword AF,
hmm
which just aired its episode 4. We're talking about it the same day that it came out. So literally hot off the presses.
Finger on the pulse, hot off the press. Fresh
Man.
D&D content coming at you, Christian.
Now, before we start talking about some of the stuff that happened in the most
hmm
recent episode, I did happen to notice, it's been a little bit since we talked
hmm
because we were both busy. We were both at Gen Con, and then, I took a little
Yeah.
sojourn off to the other side of the world.
Very jealous.
But, we only missed one of these little recaps
hmm
because the show was up to this point bi-weekly. But I hear that's about to change.
It is, yeah. So we pretty quickly noticed that in order for our show to do as well as we wanted it to do, we needed to keep momentum,
Mhm.
not just for the audience, but for our cast members as well. Because part of what I sort of had to do was like between filming sessions, go back through everybody's footage, write down specific things and like remind cast members like, hey, don't forget you talked to this person. Hey, like you two got in sort of an argument last time. Maybe we could revisit that, things like that. And like that's all well and good, and I'm happy to do it, but we definitely want it to be a more like natural experience in that
Mhm.
kind of way. And I also don't want the cast to have to like take, studious notes the entire time too. So we had talked about it pretty quickly, and it just took a minute to get to the point where we had enough sort of episodes in the chamber to actually get that going and feel comfortable with the amount of space that we had to edit. And we have an editing team, an art team, and so yeah, we wanted to do it for a while, and we're glad to finally make it weekly.
And that will be running weekly through, if I saw it correctly, the end of September ish.
That sounds right, Christian. So I'm going to say
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Oops.
Uh,
Um,
it will run for an indeterminate number of weeks, going
yes.
into at least the next month.
hmm
Uh, let's start talking about the latest episode.
Yeah.
Sword AF got an official tagline for the season, delivering destiny. Uh,
Yes.
would you say that that's kind of like the name for the adventuring slash delivering party? Uh,
I wouldn't say that that's the name of the party. I would say that this is really the name of the season.
mhm.
Um, we don't have anything announced specifically for what's going to happen beyond this specific adventure. But we do have a story that we want to tell in the amount of episodes that we have. And, because it is about a mercenary group who had to readjust and become delivery people in a time of relative comfort, a la Uber Eats or something like that, or whichever one sponsors this channel, just in case. I'm saying that now, just in case.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's what it is, delivering destiny. And that was something that we actually had in mind a while back. And it was funny because we were, we went through a change in management at the start of this thing, and it's all been really good stuff. But we had a moment of, talking with some higher ups, and they were like, do you have a name for the season? We were like, yeah, delivering destiny. And then we all looked around and we were like, did we say that anywhere? And we were like, yeah, I don't think we did. It was like, cool. So we're as meticulous as possible with so many different aspects of the show. And sometimes you just gotta pop something on later, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, you can always go, and no, you can't go, and I was going to say you can just edit the videos later or something like that, but I don't think you actually can do that on YouTube.
That is correct.
I think you can with YouTube to a certain degree. Like I
Okay.
know, if you put in a graphic of some kind that is incorrect, like I think you're able to, if it's the same amount of time, like slot that in there.
Okay.
But I don't think you can have yourself like with longer hair a year later being like, hey, actually remember that this guy's brother is still alive. He mentions that. That's going to come up in season 3. Cool, bye. you know.
Well, so what I'm hearing is that anyone who gets inspired to watch the first 3 episodes are going to start seeing like delivering destiny flashing on screen during the intro on all of these. Just like
We're making our own
subliminal
like
messages.
Berenstain Bears Mandela effect
Yeah,
situation.
exactly.
We're just gaslighting our audience because why not?
So let's talk about some of the stuff
Yeah.
that happened here in this episode.
Mhm.
So this episode, the episode 4, is what we're talking about. The party fought a werewolf.
Yes.
And my first question is spoilers, I suppose. Was there any chance that the fight with this werewolf was not going to end in death? Like, did you like account for the possibility that maybe a feral werewolf could be talked down, or was this always going to end with end with violence?
Sure. Well, we sort of have to walk the line, and especially with me as a new DM, we have to sort of find the line between like what is the story I have in mind that I want to tell versus how much freedom I want them to have. And the answer is a lot. I want them to have a lot of freedom. So when they encountered this werewolf, we did have sort of this like above game moment where like they were going for it. Bug starts off the thing like, let's kill it, at the end of last episode. And so they go right into the fight. And then I noticed some like trepidation towards the end from the cast. And I think some of the newer cast members were like having that sort of gameplay feeling of like they're learning how to explore their creativity and their agency in this. And there was this vibe of like, I was like, hey, what am I feeling from y'all? Is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, we don't really know if we're supposed to kill it or not. Like, are we supposed to? I'm like, that's up to you. And they're like, is it okay if we do? I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of mad. Like, you kind of rocked it for a while, and it's okay if you do. And Fernie did try to reason with it and say something to it. And I don't know the lore implications of this, but like Fernie having the ability to generally speak to animals, a werewolf I wouldn't consider it that. But also in a werewolf form, maybe it doesn't have the ability to communicate like a human would. So I thought that would be like a little bit of a hint of just like, it can't understand you either way, or vice versa. But yeah, I think if they did end up not killing this creature, it would have been just fine.
Okay.
It would have been way better for the creature, I'll tell you that.
Right, absolutely. That's like one of the fascinating things about like, I play Dungeons and Dragons with a lot of new players, and it's always really fascinating because a lot of people they know what Dungeons and Dragons is, but I don't always think that they understand the freedom that comes with playing Dungeons and Dragons until they're like a few hours really into the game, until they realize that they aren't limited by the whatever limitations are placed by a game designer or game developer. You can literally do anything. You can try to kill the werewolf, or you can try to kiss the werewolf, and everything is romanceable in D&D. I don't know how I got to that point. I think I've been playing a little bit too much Baldur's Gate 3.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that is that's something that I think is going to help people a lot in general. We have a live stream, because Smosh streams pretty regularly. We have a live stream coming up where Amanda, who plays Delores, and I are going to play a little bit of Baldur's Gate. And I'm kind of thinking that like by doing so, it might open up her mind a little bit too into, what is possible.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm seeing a lot of TikToks about it right now, and people are very excited about what a mundane item could do. For example, like a flask of oil. Someone was like, guys, like I tried to pull a lever and my really strong characters failed their strength check and couldn't pull the lever. But then I threw a jar of oil on it and then I could pull the lever. And it's like, yeah. You oil a lever to make it easier. Of course that makes sense, but you don't always expect that to be built in. And when you don't have a game system and a game engine guiding you, and your imagination is truly the limit, it's almost harder to learn that there are no training wheels and no parameters that you have to stick inside of,
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've run into as well with the cast members who play a lot of video games versus the cast members who don't. if I'm having them solve a puzzle, right, I'll give things that I think are like big hints. I'm like, this is heavy-handed. They're gonna get this right off the bat. And the ones who don't play games as much are a little bit like, I'm not quite sure what this means yet. And I'm like, oh, I'm speaking a language of someone who already knows not the world of D&D necessarily, but just video game problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
So I've sort of had to adjust my style as a DM to be like, what is general world problem solving in a way I can implement that for them.
One of my favorite things to do when I'm DMing
Mhm.
is as a way to kind of like um, get players to change their mindset a little bit is I like to present a problem to them in which there's no like obvious solution. Like, how do I cross this
Yeah.
chasm? And not leave like there's the rope right
Hmm.
down, or there's the secret button. And whatever they come up with is the right solution.
Exactly.
There is no wrong answer. It's just to get them to think about, like, I have total freedom to solve this problem. What do I
Hmm.
do? And it really makes for like it really helps players kind of like open their minds a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
but now that the cast is like a few episodes in,
Mhm.
we saw Shane is had he used his medicine skill to examine the
Mhm.
moon water. We see Angela's using a lot more bug spells. Do you think the cast is starting to really understand like the abilities and the mechanics of the characters a little bit more now that we're about halfish, a little bit less than halfish into the season, but we're a little ways into this thing now.
Yeah, so I'm actually really excited for everything coming up here because episodes 1 through 4 are what we filmed before we got to see audience reaction. So
Hmm.
that's before, the cast got to really like see how people were reacting to their characters and learn not just how they saw their characters, but like what the audience thought about, like, oh my God, I want to root for Bug. I want this for Bug. I want that for Fernie. I want that for Koda, Delores. And I think from then on, the cast really started to get what their roles would be. Again, there is this sense of freedom that I want them to have, but also this innate understanding that, like, if you play a bunch of video games, you understand what a tank is, what a healer is, that you might not understand if that's not as much your thing. So, you know, it wasn't until then that I started sending out like very specific coaching emails where it was like, hey, you're doing all these things awesome. Here's some things to keep in mind that you can do, you don't have to do. And I went like spell by spell and
Hmm.
was just like, here's the thing you can do. And like, here's maybe an interesting way you would use it that isn't quite to the description of that spell. And I think one of the specific challenges we face in our position is, they're learning as they go, and it's in a performance sort of context.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a fear necessarily of failure, but I think they have like a lot of respect for this medium that has so many fans and the fact that they are, in this public forum. So I think if we were sitting down and playing a home game and the cameras just happened to be on us, their creativity would be absolutely wild. Whereas,
Mhm.
right now they're like, I'm not sure if I can use the spell for that. I'm like, try, do it.
Yeah.
And when they take those moments of like taking the reins and being really creative, it's really rewarding. Um, and I frankly love it.
And so the hellish rebuke that happens in this episode,
Yes.
the pull the finger, and
Hmm.
I've never seen a hellish rebuke used that way. Uh,
Hmm.
um, do you think that Dolores is a gastrointestinal pact warlock?
Yes. We do get into that. Yes. No.
Oh, that was
She's
just a throwaway
packed of the
joke.
colon. No. I guess it impacted bowels. No. So we do actually get in next episode to something, just a little minor spoiler. Into sort of why Dolores' spells are the way they are.
Uh-huh.
And it's not a big reveal to the other characters necessarily. It's more just for the audience and Dolores. And it's funny because I had played a game with a different group where like Eldritch Blasts had their own specific flavor for each person.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that. And the fact that it was just Dolores doing that. And I realized that's how I sort of described it to her. I'm like, yeah, you get to describe what it looks like. I was like, oh wait, no, that was from a other specific game. And then we started thinking together about like, what are the story implications of this? Why does it look like this for you? And it ends up being this like happy accident where it's a really cool source of some character development for her. In fact, I'll say this: you're probably going to notice a pretty stark difference in, again, episodes 1 through 4 was before audience intervention. Now everyone's owning their characters and learning them, and like they understand the game mechanics, so we can go a little bit deeper into like, how'd you end up here? Why? What would you
Okay.
like? What drives you? And for a couple characters this next episode, you get to sort of learn a lot more about what makes them tick.
So, and when they learn what makes them tick,
Mhm.
are the conversations going to take place in private? We keep seeing a recurring theme of the characters having conversations in front of the rest of the characters, and that comes with some inadvertent consequences, perhaps, or maybe some color commentary they weren't expecting. Like, Bugs Talk with Koda being a good example in this. Do you think
Yeah.
that at any point in time will they actually remember that, we don't need to stick together as a group. We can have these one-on-one conversations.
Yes. So in this coming episode, and I'm excited to see your reaction to it, but in this coming episode, there are more moments where I'm like, again, I don't think they necessarily, some of them maybe not didn't necessarily know that like they can split off and do their own thing and be like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go run into the woods, because why would you do that if you're being a team player and you
Yeah, of
haven't seen
course.
that before? So I'm pretty specifically like, hey, so you are by yourself later, you do this later, and you're by yourself, and then this happens. What do you think? And you know, I think they end up sort of getting the picture. Like I love that they're learning by doing,
Yeah.
as I am too. Without me having to be like, no, you guys need to be by yourselves. It feels natural and like a good general progression of those things.
I will say this. I think that it's better that the cast keeps doing these things in a group because it encourages that team mentality. What you
Totally.
don't want to have is like a player like who keeps wanting to put the spotlight on them and like, oh, I
Yes.
want to take this solo activity where like I'm
Right.
flexing my muscles and like having this private character moment that dominates the session. So like I actually thought it was I find it refreshing that everyone kind of sticks together as a group. They're traveling as a group. They're in unfamiliar settings. Why would they
Yeah.
go off on their own?
100%. And I appreciate you saying that. And to that end, I really want to shout out Chance, who I haven't talked about much in these interviews. Chance, who plays Koda, the
Yeah.
Blade singer, Aladrin, because he is the one in the group who's played the most D&D by far. Of any of the cast. He has, again, I think it's like a weekly or monthly home game that's been going on for a couple years now. And it's funny because the character he's playing in his home game has an important connection to the character he's playing now.
Really?
So he's sort of built his own like extended universe, and that really informs what he's doing. And you can also notice, like, if you go back through these other episodes, if Koda is ever like alone or stumbled upon while alone, you can tell he's like always writing letters or doing something by himself. So I think it's a wonderful way to show this depth of character and these goals without it being like, I'm going to have my monologue as the main character. In fact, because he's taken this more brooding kind of like Sasuke role to like everybody else's Naruto, it does position him to be less in the forefront and the spotlight, while he's also just as capable of being hilarious and performing, as everybody else. And he picks his moments very intelligently. And I think it's just such a solid balance that I don't think we could do without his level of experience.
Do you think that's a conscious decision on his part, since he is like the veteran player and he's giving the other players their space to kind of grow into their characters a bit?
I would think so. My guess is like everybody else here, and like with me as a DM, it's probably like a certain percentage conscious choice, a certain percentage happy accident. But he's a very talented performer who's been doing this a long time beyond just playing D&D. He's an incredible improviser. He's an incredible musician. He knows what he's doing in terms of story structure and character. So I would imagine that if it were an accident, he has no problem with it, but I think it's probably pretty intentional. Yeah.
So the end of the episode,
Mhm.
we end inside a haunted mansion. It
Mhm.
has enchanted dinnerware.
Yes.
It has a magical candelabra. It
Mhm.
has a large library.
Mhm.
There is an encounter with a beast man in a
Mhm.
room.
Yes.
with Rose.
Right.
Uh,
I don't know what you're getting at there, Christian.
yeah, I have to ask, is the mouse going to be calling you for copyright infringement in the next episode?
No, I'm pretty specific about a bunch of legally distinct things. For example, when they get up there, I know you called it a rose. There's a huge twist next episode, but tell you what,
That's what
it's not a rose.
That's what I was looking for. It's like, tell me a little bit about, like give me some teasers here. You set up no big musical numbers coming. What's about to happen here? Because clearly I've watched my 1990s Disney cartoons. What are you laying down for next episode?
Yeah, I'm still confused while you're bringing up the mouse and Disney. I don't see the correlation, but I will say, obviously there are a lot of nods here. For you as a viewer, I say accept the nods, go with whatever you think is going on. And you're gonna learn a lot more about what's going on this coming episode. Like, I know we're here to talk about episode 4, but like episode 5 really does. Again, that's me seeing audience reactions, spending more time with this, thinking about it constantly, and actually like writing out like, the first episode I was like with bullywugs in that town, whatever happens.
Yeah,
they're probably gonna screw up. That's okay. We'll have consequences for that. For this, I'm like, ooh, castle adventure, little mystery, little enchantment, a little bit of a curse. There's more specific lore to this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. Did did your players kind of pick up like when did you think your players kind of figured out like what the hints that you were laying out there at the end of that episode?
It definitely happened at different times.
Oh, really?
It was really funny to sort of slowly but surely watch the lights click on. And it's fun. And even into the next episode, there's a few weeks between episode 4 and episode 5 in terms of when we filmed.
Okay.
Even between them, with all that time to think about it, there's some reveals that happen in episode 5 that make people go like, oh, it's very different being in it versus watching this happen.
Okay. So I do have to ask kind of a somewhat of a big follow-up question. There's a turtle dragon that's kind of running about in your world. Right. How much damage has that thing caused at this point? Like, is the coastline just kind of trashed at this point?
That's a great question. And it's something that isn't like directly mentioned in I don't think I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not directly mentioned. But in my mind, as the DM, it is definitely off doing some damage. It is not sticking quite to the coastline right now because it's been trapped for a very long time. So I think it's enjoying its freedom. But if there were like an extended universe sort of book situation where like, we released our own like, extra homebrew content for Sword AF delivering Destiny, this would be affecting trade routes right now.
Okay.
You'd be noticing that like just a few ships here and there haven't been reporting in, and sea life's been acting weird,
So, let's wrap this thing up. So, you've given us a couple of big teasers for episode 5. So, we're going weekly. So, more of a general thing, what should people be looking forward to for the rest of the season? What I'm trying to think of the good metaphor here. What cookie crumbs should people be keeping their eyes out on as you continue to craft this story? I don't know what that metaphor was. That was a weird one, but we're going to run with it.
No, that's okay. That's okay. What cookie crumbs? I mean, I'll tell you what. I've definitely given you more teasers than I ever have in other interviews. I'm a little bit like, I'm probably not going to get in trouble for any of this. We'll see. Thank goodness it's weekly, because that means there's not too much time to have to sit on this information. What cookie crumbs? I would say.
Well, let's instead of plot focus, what is an interaction that people should look forward to? Let's go with that. Let's keep you out of trouble. What's a really good interaction in the next episode?
I would say, because the cast is now able to run loose in an enchanted castle, with all kinds of new NPCs.
Oh God.
Truly anything they're excited about, speaking with, or anything I'll say, no, take that back. Anything they're excited to explore within an enchanted castle, I have the ability to say, yeah, that's probably there. So it's definitely the most playgroundy environment we've had yet.
I mean,
and the cast kind of takes those reins and runs with it.
I was about to say that basically makes the next episode sound like it's appointment viewing. That's like can't miss.
Yes.
I can't wait for that.
You know what, Christian? I would echo that. You definitely shouldn't miss episode 5 on Smosh Games of the Sword AF-ter Delivering Destiny.
Yeah,
only on Smosh Games.
Airs every Wednesday.
That's true.
Yeah, can't forget that. Gotta get those, because more people that watch it within the first 24 hours. I'm sure that impacts the algorithm. All hail the algorithm.
It does. And that's been an interesting thing too of like, first episode's over 1 million views, second one is about half that. And if you look at other successful D&D shows, it's about right.
Yeah.
People, I think, after the initial hype, want to sort of go back after a season is done and be like, oh, I'm going to clean my room and binge this. Like, I'm going to have this on a playlist and, finally get that work done. So, I'm not worried at all, but I'm very excited for people to consume the whole thing. For sure.
I think everyone is looking forward to seeing where the rest of the season goes.
Thank you very much.
So, before we take off, any final words or shout outs that you want to give?
Just shout out to the cast and crew working so hard. We've filmed quite a bit recently, and it's just been really impressive to see them take the reins here, and couldn't do this alone. And thanks to the audience, the amount of fan art we've gotten, the amount of hype that's there when we're like, hey, new episode just dropped, and people are like, I was having the worst Wednesday and I forgot this was a thing, I'm gonna watch it right now. Like, that's really nice. It's really nice. So thanks to everybody. Thank you, Christian.
Oh, thank you, Damien, for coming on here.
Thank you.
And thank you, Pete, for who's hasn't sounded off yet, but thank you, Pete, for producing this. Can't forget about producer Pete.
Can't forget. Pour one out for Pete.
Yeah.
Pour some booch out for Pete.
I was about to say, don't actually pour that thing out. There's too much electronic equipment close by.
An empty kombucha bottle. Mere illusions, Christian.
That was the best acting I've ever seen in my whole life.
Whew. Well, on that note, thank you very much for watching, and be sure to catch the next episode of Sword AF over on Smosh Games. And until next time,
goodbye, Damien!